Hello there, in this video I will be teaching and giving tips on how to create your own structure module for my structure generator pack. If the version number in the video title is older than the version number that is currently out, I recommend checking maybe the description. I might have a link to the updated information, or check my channel for the updated information. However, this hopefully will be the end-all be-all information video. This video is split into several parts, which there should be timestamps again in the description for each of those segments, or maybe you could follow arrows that I might put on screen that should give you a vague spot to click in the video timeline. Anyway, those parts are the first part being how to prep the actual module prefab to be your own custom module, so that it will work with the base pack. The second part is how to prep these actual structure block files so that they're nice and easy to use in your pack. The third part is, of course, how to write the actual data pack function files for the structure generating system. Then the part after that is how to then wire those files into each biome that you want to put them in. And after that, which might not even have a timestamp, is just any other random tips or anything else I can think of. Anyway, let's get started with prepping your module pack. So, the first thing you are going to want to do is you are going to want to download the module prefab. You can also optionally download the module debug that can help. That pack is specifically for putting it in a world and then setting the generator up to 100% and seeing where all the pillars it generates that can show you the patterns of the biomes and how rare maybe biomes are. But that's just a side thing. The reason why I am doing this prepping portion first is because if this looks a little annoying to do, another option you might have is to offer it up to be added to a community pack, where I can wire up any structure you want. If you give me the files and everything, then you don't have to do this bit of work, but it will be compiled with a bunch of other packs, all in one big pack as a community pack. So, yeah, if this portion is confusing to you, if you don't know how to write data packs, then you might want to skip to the later parts of the video, just see how to make the structures and everything, so that then you could send me the files to work on for you for that compilation pack. Anyway, getting past that, the first thing you will want to do with the prefab file is, of course, rename it. I recommend naming it so that it's alphabetically below the base pack. Let me get the base pack actually pasted into this folder too real quick. One awkward thing is, yeah, it takes a while to paste these because there's lots of little files. Anyway, so this can be whatever you want to name it, generally speaking. I recommend, just something informative, like, let's just call this Ice Castle. Now, of course, anybody can rename this folder if it doesn't fit. Whatever works. And obviously, I recommend keeping the version number, so that it matches up with the actual version of the pack that it's compatible with. But also, if you update your pack, I would recommend then adding an extra sort of subversion number to it. If you update the Ice Castle once, that would be the name. If then you update it again, that would be, simple just numbering systems. That's just my recommendation to keep things consistent in the community. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do, and this one is very important, is you actually go into the data folder. This is where really the magic happens. You're going to want to rename this prefab folder. This one is actually very important because this one is what every little code thing is going to call, and you do not want it to be incompatible with other packs. So you're going to want to make this a distinct name. My naming method is to use my username initials, KingCrabmaster, CM, So if you if you're Lobster Master, it would be LM, or Lobster King LK. I don't know. Pick something that works. I don't think you can have capitalization, whatever it is. And obviously, something that reflects the pack that you made. So Ice Castle, I guess, would be what I would name this. Just make sure it's a bit distinct, because it will need to be called by the data pack code. So you know what? Let's just give this trademark. I don't know. Just something distinct. So yeah, I recommend copying that name, because you're going to need it a lot. The next thing to do is then to open up the load and the tick functions in that folder. You'll notice here we're already getting started in needing to replace the prefab name with your custom name. And this is what you're going to have to do a lot in the preparation of these files. You just copy that name over, and yeah, that's what you do. Going back to the folder. Excuse me. Actually, one second. That's a better way. So yeah, you've got those copied in and saved. I guess another thing I should bring up, I recommend using Notepad++. This actually has a lot of nice features, such as, being able to tab between multiple files, being able to Control-Z your way out of, to undo your way out of just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's just a recommendation, is something like Notepad++ or better. Anyway, going back into the folders, actually backing all the way out here. Now we have to go into the functions folder. This is where the magic happens. So this is the annoying part of this pack. It is all of these files, which I don't have the folder down far enough for you to see. One second. Can I resize this so that I can scroll down? Oh boy. I am well prepared. There we go. Yeah, all of these files is kind of an obnoxious thing. This is where I have code logic that divides it up, because there are about, 120 biomes that are in use in this pack, as you might see in the Biomes folder. Every single biome is its own file. This is done for efficiency reasons, because if it was not done, then let's say you had a structure that you want to spawn in every single biome once. That would be 120 commands that it would have to check every single one to see, okay, am I spawning it here, 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 or here? By splitting it up like this, using branching logic, it actually only runs about 22 commands ever. Well, give or take. If you have like 10 commands per biome, then, or 10 structures per biome, then, that's 30. But that's a lot better than thousands of commands. Anyway, that's just explaining what's the point of these files. Before I get to actually modifying them, let's open the pack's actual start and loop functions. So, with the start function, you have this is for the prefab pack. This is every time the world loads, it will kill an existing specific entity and then spawn that same entity in, just to kind of refresh it. You will want to rename this to reflect your pack. So, there we go. So, just make sure it's something decently unique as a name, so that it's not going to be anybody else's pack name. Talk between people. If there is ever any, issues where two people have the same pack, just, talk it out, figure out who needs to change their pack. The more unique name, the less this will happen. I recommend just, renaming all of that. That this file is good now. You've got your unique entity that my pack will then select and tell it, okay, I'm going to run this pack's structures on this chunk. Which this is actually where it gets properly picked. Remember to change the prefab pack into your pack's name. And then over here, which let me re-grab this real quick. Over here is where it actually starts divvying out to the biomes. So make sure to replace anywhere that has the CM module prefab with your, whatever pack name, TM module, Ice Castle, whatever you call it. So now that we've gotten that, going back into the folder, if you're using Notepad++, I really do just recommend selecting all of these and back-clicking and hitting edit with Notepad++. That will open all of them, and that makes it really, really quick to work with because, while you can't see it on screen, maybe I can add that source in. Yeah, so Notepad++ has this really, really effective find and replace where I want to replace... Whoa. There we go. I want to replace it with that, and where it is, I want to replace that with that. So you will see all of those changed. Let me actually move this out of the way. Yeah, all of those names changed. So you'll want to go through each of these and hit replace all on those prefab pack names. Just, go through them all, replace them all. It's not that bad of a process. Kind of annoying. This just makes sure it's all your pack being run and not any other pack, not the prefab pack. That's just how data packs work. If you use data packs, you're used to that. Which I'm not going to show you all of these, but just know that that's how this works. Anywho, so after you go through and replace all that, that's kind of where it's prepared. The pack will now, the pack is now, selectable. It can run through, it can pick its biomes. I will open up the biomes real quick, even though we're not to that part of this tutorial yet. If I open, for instance, the, where is it? There's so many biomes now. I feel like it's literally right here and I can't see it. Plains, there it is. Yeah. If I open the plains, you'll see there's not really much going on in here. Basically, all that we've got is this re-rolls the pack. Basically, all of these files are fine. You don't have to edit every single one of them. By default, if you're not using it, it has this highlighted line to automatically re-roll to give other packs a chance of spawning in that biome before it just cuts out. So basically, if your pack gets selected, there's a 50% chance that another pack will then have a chance to get selected, or maybe less than 50%. I use a randomizer that generates a value from 0 to 999, a range of 1,000. And so the 0 to 499 is 50%. This line is, I guess, the one that you'll be working with later. This is the one where, for instance, if we were putting something into the plains biome, you would, of course, want to replace that with the Ice Castle name, or whatever name your pack is. And then you would want to give this, a value. Such as that for the other 50%. Now, if you always want it to spawn, you can easily just delete this and then make that 0 to 999. That means it's always technically you can just, do that and now it's 100% chance, but I kind of do recommend just accepting and leaving that in, just in case, now I want to spawn something else and it's now this easy to re-add the 50-50 chance. Or, I want, a chance between 3 of them. So, there we go, which obviously you would replace this empty with the structure name. We'll get back to that. Anyway, so now your pack is truly prepped. So let's get on to the structures, the actual prepping of the structures. So, over here we have my personal structure building world. Now, yeah, I kind of recommend just making a world with like sort of a flat void area of, my recommendation is quartz blocks because it's a nice grid pattern. This is if you're making a lot of structures. If you're making like one or two, it's like maybe not necessary. But there's only a couple things you really need to do to prepare a structure, give or take how complicated your structure is going to be. But if you really just want to spawn a structure in, you basically build it with structure blocks, or build it and put a structure block down, and add structure void around everywhere that you want to, you know, overlap with. Like, this is meant to be underground. Like, over here we have this portal thing I've got. I can show you really quick an example of why you want to use these structure void blocks, is because when it's placed into the ground, it's not going to replace every block with air. It basically tells the game, you know, I want, I don't want this to be air blocks. Stuff like that. Which then, if we get back over here, come on, faster. If we come over here, you might notice I have the interior filled still with the air blocks. As you see, it's displayed with blue. Yeah, so that's a simple part with structure blocks. You know, if you're used to using these, you should know that, obviously. There is one weird recommendation. So when I spawn these in, I spawn this 11 by 11 thing offset -5 and -5, so that the actual structure block is centered. This just makes sure it's where I want on the terrain. Inside here, I have these 3 spots set as structure void so that they won't get overlapped. Technically, I guess you only really would need these 2 for what I use this for. Basically, it'll have the structure, the initial structure block is here, the redstone block is here, but a second structure block is here. If, due to the order of how this is, if these fill in with air, then you have the problem where the redstone block activates this block, which then overwrites this block and doesn't do your secondary layer. And what that secondary layer is this, which is my sort of extras. You might notice it's things like cobwebs and mushrooms. This is what I use to make structures look more deteriorated. And you might notice, yeah. Oh, interesting. I found a couple broken blocks. Well, that's fixed in the next version. Yeah, so the this is all structure void, so that none of the air blocks replace. And yeah, this extras is overlaid at a low integrity on top of this, which gives it a sort of varying degraded look to it. And yeah, if the structure block that put this there was replaced by the initial structure being put in place, you would have problems. Now, of course, you'll see in the actual prep file, you're going to want to then replace these with air, just so it's not a problem. Now, of course, this is less of a problem if, for instance, you are centering it as this one I have centered in front of the door. Because if you're doing it in front of the door, like I've got here, yeah, you still want the structure void. But, you know, you're going to be putting air blocks there anyway, because you don't want the door covered up. Now, this is where the offset can get a little complicated. I actually have this building spawning rotating, so I have to do specific offsets for each of the positionings of where it would rotate, because of an annoying aspect of how these structure blocks work. I can, yeah, I'll just grab, I guess, this. Just right over here. Keep in mind when you are loading these that the square shape is centered on the structure block. So you're going to have to do the relative position, you know. If you had it like that for relatively positioning in here, on a normal one, for the 180, you know, it's got to be the inverse. So just keep that in mind while you're designing structures. Yeah. What other advice for prepping the blocks? I guess another thing, and this is I guess more advanced. You might notice, let me go over here because it's easier. You might notice there are no mobs and no chests or anything in here. I actually use a method of spawning in random numbers of enemies of random types and random numbers of loot with them. So what I actually do, if I go F3 and B, is I have custom specific entities that I place in here. These are very useful for randomizing, like, amounts of things and positionings of things. I definitely recommend using entities for that kind of thing. What's even better is this building rotates, and because the entities are spawned in rotated with the building, no matter where you rotate it, these spots will always be the same inside the building, so you don't have to worry about, like, you don't hard code the chest spawning in. You execute a command at the entity's position, and then that command is the fill command for the chest. So, very good stuff that I recommend. Generally speaking, that should be everything you need to do to, you know, normally prep a structure. I mean, there's more advanced stuff that you can do, like, for instance, these structures are too big to fit all in one piece, so the top half is here, the bottom half is here. There's complicated things you can do, like I spawn those trees, I want them somewhat randomized, so the branches are made of several pieces. There's a lot of other kinds of prep work you can do. Really, the sky is the limit. You don't even need structure blocks for this pack, technically. This is just, you know, the best way to get a detailed structure into the game. Like, these ones are just a bunch of void air and stuff, and, you know, it spawns them in next to each other, and it looks like a lake. Actually, I think I have one of those over here that I can show you. So, you can really keep in mind, it does not have to be one building. It can be overlaid on top of itself. Like over here, all of those water puddles I had can be spawned in random positions to form a sort of larger pond. I guess the other thing you could keep in mind is that this is a full integrity thing. You can spawn things in with much lower integrity, but you should keep in mind integrity is not smart, and there can be floating blocks, so I do not recommend putting it too high or too low of an integrity value. Yeah, so for the most part, that is prep for the actual structure blocks. Now on to the actual structure files. Now, the actual first thing you want when working with the structure files is you actually need to grab those saved structure block files from your save file. The easiest way to get there is to go to Edit and Open World folder. This will open up a folder, which let me grab that source for you. Yoink. So, in the folder, there is a generated folder. There should be one for your pack name. And this is where everything you've generated is stored. There's different formatting for this. I don't think you need it all in one folder, but I don't really bother otherwise. This is where, like, for instance, I want my desert tower. Or, you know what? Snow tower, because I named it Ice Castle. Tower Snow. and then I had Tower Snow extras. So what I might do is take that and go into the actual test data pack that I had made, go out of function folders and into this structure folder, and this is where you're going to want to put those generated files. Once they're there, and then you can go back and call them in your functions. So in here we have a structures folder. You can have subfolders in here, but not too much needed fanciness wise. It give or take. It's all about how many structures you're gonna have. Having folders is good for if you have a lot, like a lot. Anyway, this folder contains a couple base things that you can copy from. These might be a little outdated, but they should work fine. You can go into my Megamix data pack, the module that comes with, or like that is recommended to come with this pack. You can just go through. None of my stuff is commented, but it has all kinds of code snippets you can use. I'm fine with you copying some code over. It's commands. Literally every command looks the same, basically. Anyway, what you will need is, at the very least, you will need this base requirements file. It's not really the base requirements. Technically, all you need to make sure it doesn't break are these two commands. The first one makes sure that the randomizer does not pick a second structure. Let's, for instance, say you generated, so it's picked the plains biome. It picks 0 to 500. It picks this structure, but then this structure uses the randomizer, and that randomizer comes out with a value that's 600. That would mean it would then pick the structure below it, and they would overlap. You don't want that, so just run the randomizer at the end at a number higher than the randomizer can do, and it'll clean it. The other one is to set the biome to 999. This makes sure that it knows, okay, I'm done. It picked a structure. We're good here. So those are the two mandatory ones. The other ones that I have commented out here are just ones I find very useful that I feel like a lot of people will maybe want. Oh wait, this one's also like highly recommended. It's not required, but when your structure spawns again in plains, for instance, grass blocks, even with the structure block just generally replacing things, will drop seeds and such. I think it's like the extra tall grass might like break in a weird way that thinks, okay, I need to drop an item. I think flowers drop too. So it's gonna make a mess around your structure. So I recommend just doing a kill command here, just to clean everything out. Now keep in mind, any command done in this file, technically this was not really necessary, I don't think, to do this execute as at self. I don't really think that's entirely necessary, because everything that's done here is done from here, which is, done from here, which is done from here, which, up the line to this specific file, which is kind of the one that starts divvying everything out. Oh wait, no, it's not even this one. What am I thinking? It's the loop file. This one executes as the structure. So it's going to execute as this entity at that entity. So everything you do in your actual structure file is, at that location. Obviously, you can then, execute as a different entity, add a different entity, a lot of different things you can do there. Anyway, yeah, and force load is just useful, just as another thing, just going on. Force load is useful if your structure is very large, because, if it gets to a certain point, I don't think it can actually generate if the chunks aren't loaded, so you might have to force load the chunks around it, and my pack automatically unforce loads every tick, which I might want to change just in case other packs don't like that. But yeah, so if you need to, just force load add, and my pack will remove it afterward. But yeah, that's a great command that they added recently. Well, it's been around for a while, but we haven't been able to put it in data packs. Anyway, and of course the other thing here is the land structures. This is useful for things like spawning a structure on the ground in the nether, for instance, because all of the nether biomes are, well, most of my nether biomes count it as in the sky, so if you do a land structure at the beginning of it, it will force it to the ground. Also, if you are doing something fancy, where, okay, you've got a core structure that then executes sort of another structure that spawns near it, you can have that other structure executed several blocks in the air, so that, like, if there's a hill next to your structure, it will put it on top of the hill. But if it's not a hill, then it can use the land function to plop it down onto the ground. Again, this one's not necessary. Your structure will generally be on the ground for most biomes, except for the nether. Anyway, this file seems a bit empty, though. There's no structures, there's nothing in here. This is where you have full reign to do what you want. Like, if you just want to do, like, a summon command, what is that, like, something like that, I don't remember. If you just, want to summon something, you can. That could be your structure, technically. If you want to do just a fill command, just you know, if that's what you want, a small pillar of bedrock, you can do that. Basically anything you can do with commands, you can do in these files. You can even, for instance, summon an entity that then you have in your loop function extra code that runs every tick that will, do a particle at that entity. It's very useful stuff. You can have this just, start up something for another data pack. The sky is the limit. If it can be done with commands, it can be done here. However, if you just want a basic structure, I do have in the folder, let me actually, in the folder that, for instance, I've got Tower Grass as a basic, just a very basic structure prefab that you can utilize. It has, it has 3 parts that you can utilize, and there's a lot here. Actually, hopefully you can still see this. I'm going to zoom out once or twice, just so it's back to normal. I think that's actually usually where I have it. Some of the commands can get kind of long, and you might need to scroll over. Let's zoom back in. So, this one has a lot going on. I'm actually going to delete these comments. These comments will be there, but I'm just going to delete them for my own clarity while doing this. Again, technically this one might be a little outdated compared to the version of it I have in my pack. I did make this tutorial pack a while ago at this point, so it's like, oops. Anyway, so there's a couple things going on over here. This fills some air so that if the integrity does not have some of the air blocks, it'll still have the interior completely clean. These run my randomizers. That's one thing. There is a text file that I recommend you use that is like recommended commands, all kinds of nice stuff. It comes with the prefab pack. It just should be in there. I think it was actually, one second. If I go back to the folder real quick, yeah, there's a basic tutorial and then useful commands and tips. That will have a lot of these different commands that you can just copy and paste from that file. But yeah, so this runs 2 randomizers. And the first one, as you see, random 1 is the result here. The first one figures out which version of the integrity that it's going to be using. And then the second one, random 2, will then go, and you might notice it has the name Tower Grass Extras. This is the integrity versions of the extras, so it's the amount of like grassy growth and stuff on the tower. This is just a thing I use commonly to make towers vary between designs within the pack, varying amounts of degradation, I guess you could say. You don't technically need all of this, but what you do need to make that structure block appear is, at the very least, you need this command. And I don't know why I have these execute as things. These aren't necessary. They really aren't. So, like, all you need is the fill command, which I think can be a set block command, that puts the structure block down, and then a redstone block, and then your, oops, you do not want an accident run there, and then the air to kind of get rid of, like, where it was, or what other block that you might have there. So that really is the most baseline. What you need is just put a structure block down, put a redstone block down. It's kind of that simple. Things can get a lot more complicated. You can, have the randomizer decide, okay, I'm doing a room off to the side, I'm doing a room up here. Like, it can run executing positioned in all kinds of different directions. That's how I do, like, the forests and whatnot. All kinds of crazy stuff you can do. Anyway, yeah. So there's that. Now, the you might notice I have the entities I mentioned in the previous part, where there's entities around that have specific tags that then this file can target. This is one of those examples of where it targets those. It targets a random one. Well, actually, I have it actually set up with different sets 1, 2, and 3, and 4. That allows it to put them in very specific positions with the rarity and complicated stuff. That just fills a chest with a specific loot table set up in place. It does the same with the mobs, technically, where it takes the spawner entities and then runs this command on it, and then this command will then do some, math stuff. If within ranges, spawn this, and this. Count down, then run it again on a new one that's a different spawner location. It kind of repeats that until it runs out of numbers. You can spawn it technically the same way I did with the chests in this file, where it's like, oh, okay, if it's above this, spawn. If it's above this, spawn. If it's above this, spawn. So that varies the numbers. It's another way to do that. It all depends on how complicated you want it to be, really, at that point. If you are using those entities, I do recommend having the kill commands for the tag spawner tag chest. Again, these entities you can summon in the helpful. Which file do I have that in? I think I have that in the helpful tips and tricks, whatever file. Yeah, it should be there. Or commands and tips, sorry. Another thing I don't want to gloss over is this is what I use to actually generate the sort of base, where if it's like on the side of a cliff, it will generate all the way down the cliff. Because if I go back over real quick and open the game, give it a second, you might notice none of these towers have those massive sort of foundations to them. They kind of just cut off that far down, and that is because I have this specific command which executes right below the tower, where it'll loop in this set of scripts where it fills a specific set of block tags that are air. Again, you can reuse these lines. This should still continue to be in later versions and everything. If it detects that it has filled some, it'll loop again. If it eventually stops detecting it's filled any, it stops, which keeps it from generating down into the caves. And yeah, it's a nice system that I've built, and I hope that it is helpful. Anyway, that should be a very extensive overview of various things you can do to generate, your structures with the data pack files. This video's going on forever, oh my gosh, and I feel like I'm forgetting things. I definitely probably have. Holy moly. Like, there's so much to talk about. Which, I guess, let's get into the final part then. I already kind of covered this earlier, but the final part is, of course, just to go back over the biomes. So once you have that structure, that really is just where you go in, you decide, okay, I want this structure in this biome, so like, I don't know, we keep talking about snow stuff, so let's pick Snowy Taiga. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. I kind of showed this earlier, but this is the file where you actually wire it in, so, even though I don't have one named it, let's just say that the structure that we built was called Ice Castle. Now, of course, don't forget, yet again, what was it? TM module Ice Castle? I think that was our name, our unique name for this tutorial. I guess I could have named this, not trademark, but Tutorial Master. Ooh hoo hoo. Anyway, so what this file is doing is, if you're not using a biome, this line is just used to reroll to make sure other packs have a chance before it eventually gives up to statistic 50% chances. And this line, like, if you have a structure, generally speaking, I recommend deleting that when you're using this file. That's generally only there if you're not using a file, or if you have a biome that you want things to rarely spawn in. Like, for instance, if we were working with a beach, you don't want too much stuff spawning on the beach, so you might keep that there and, treat it like it's a structure that you're randomizing between. Anywho, from there, whether you keep that or remove it, if this ice castle is 100% chance, there's two things you can do. You can give it this value, because this randomizer randomizes between 0 and 999. It's a 1000 value randomizer. And so to have a 100% chance of spawning, obviously that's all you have to do is write that. Obviously you can also technically do this. However, I do recommend keeping that in case, you want a second one named Ice Fortress that you want to randomize between. Basically, this is all it takes to plug into biomes. Now, keep in mind, there are a lot of biomes. There are a heck of a lot of biomes. So, it might be a little obnoxious, but I really do recommend you go through, you pick out what biomes you want it to be in. I would recommend going through some of my, I have some files in the folders. If we go back out to, I believe, yeah, there's a biome key, a biome rarity. I think the debug also has its own biome key for which pillars match up, but that's unrelated. Biome rarity is my findings of how rare I think the biomes seem to be by my own testing. It might not be 100% accurate, but biome key is, of course, which biome it is. Most of the, not all of these are filled in with information, just some of the more, I guess, complicated ones. Because, for instance, you really don't need help knowing which one's a forest, but you might need some help understanding, like, I have a biome called Ocean Ravine. That's a ravine in an ocean, but it technically is just anywhere deeper than deep ocean, I guess, sort of. Then you've got lake. Lake isn't an actual biome in the game, but it's any water that's not ocean or river that, just generic lake area. There's even one near the bottom, which again, this is why I recommend going through this list. There's Hot Lake, which is in all of the deserts and badlands, or Cold Lake, which is in the taiga biomes and snowy, or not the snowy taiga and snowy tundra biomes. So, I recommend really going through the list of biomes and thinking through where you want your thing to be. Keep in mind if you're using some things might not look good in some biomes, give or take how they generate. A basic tower like mine can go about anywhere. However, things like, for instance, my camps, I need to redesign them a bit. Right now, if they hang off ledges, they look kind of ugly. So, I could put them in a taiga biome, but they would look bad in a taiga hills biome, even though it's essentially the same, just a little bumpier. So, yeah, just keep in mind all of that. And, yeah, I think it's technically more efficient if you use more of the biomes, because it doesn't have to do as many rerolls. If you put, if this is the only pack someone installs, and you don't have any nether structures, then it's going to re-roll a couple times. It's maybe a little slowing down the data pack. It's not going to destroy anything, but it might get a little obnoxious for the data pack to deal with. Just losing a tick or two. I don't really know how bad it really is. Hasn't really given me any problems. But yeah, if you can use more of the biomes, I do recommend it. Which is also why I recommend if you just have one structure, I do recommend putting that, messaging me that, so that I can put it in the community pack. Because the community pack will likely use as many biomes as possible, because once you get a bunch of people together to make structures, obviously their structures can be spread about a little bit more. Unless for some reason everybody wants to have a mushroom fields pack, but that would be a major prank, and targeting my soul. Yeah, that should be it. That's how you wire into biomes. That's my recommendation with biomes. I guess besides that, if I were to go into my own Megamix pack real quick in another folder here. I guess we're onto the tricks and tips. I don't know. There's a lot of commands you can do to really spice up your stuff. For instance, let's see here. The land structures thing, for instance, is specifically to the entity position, but you don't technically need to do that. So, for instance, here in the camp, I have a chance of spawning more camps nearby, so it actually does the command positioned into the air over to the side, and it just does the same camp script, but what it actually does, I should say, is the camp land script, which is a repeating script that will check for, a specific block tag that I have, which you can use too. It will check if there is basically air below, and if there is, it'll just repeat this command. If there isn't, it'll cut it off and do the other command. This method is really good because then you don't need any entity positions. However, it does have this weird problem where, for some reason, certain other versions, you might need to swap these. I still need to figure out a better method than this. This is my best method right now. But you might need to swap those, because for some reason, for certain structures, it just infinitely loops if you don't. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure that out, but yeah, so if you don't want to use entity positions, that's what I recommend. It's actually way better for these complicated things on land to do that, because then you just need the positioned command, execute command for that, which the positioned version is exactly what I use for all of my big dungeons, for instance. So, like, if I go into my folder again, and if I find, where is it? There it is, Deep Dungeon. And if I find Deep Dungeon Start, so, like, Deep Dungeon, you know, it does some fill commands. This one actually does not use a single structure block right now. I might replace that later to make it look cooler. But, I don't like that I use these. I need to go through and clean a lot of my code. Okay, here's the thing I will say. So this is the first command in the thing. Do not use as at self positioned if it's on another one that's supposed to be positioned, because this will do the positioning at the entity. If I go, so like if this one runs and it goes to the, you know, the up left, if I go to that, up left file, you might notice that file doesn't have any at self stuff. It doesn't execute at the entity, because now this is a position next to that entity, and where then this command, for instance, will run is then again positioned offset those 6 to the or this one's like 6 to the x-axis up from that position that's offset. So it's like repeatedly offsetting the positions. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm definitely moving away from working with entity positioning and going to positioned positioning, just because it's so much more consistent and so much easier to work with, in my opinion. Yeah, so I guess another thing I could mention with tips, I utilize the Palm Forest and Palm Patch, sort of, I guess you could say, quote unquote, algorithm, all the time, where it's basically put the structure block down, or, well, not put the structure block down, it goes to the spawn, subset of commands, and then if predicates itself some randomized values to decide, okay, are we going this way, are we going that way, where are we going? Yeah, so I recommend, I guess, if you want to make more little natural things like that this method is just simple and sweet and it works really well. But this method does require you to utilize the sub-landing files, so keep in mind that those can get a little freaky. Yeah, really, like, again, the sky's the limits. I guess that's what I'll leave you off with. This video got super dang long. I really don't know why you're still watching if you are here. I guess unless you skip through for the tips and tricks thing. I'm not good at explaining things quickly and concisely, if you couldn't notice. So I should probably end this video and let you, like, figure it out. If there's anything I missed, again, check the basic tutorial file that comes with the prefab. Check the helpful commands and tips file that should have a lot of things you need in it. Ask me in the comments, and, well, hopefully the next version of this video I ever make isn't twice as long, because I'm pretty sure this is twice as long as that video was. So, yeah, thanks for putting up with my extreme rambling of just trying to throw a bunch of information into the wild. Hopefully that was helpful. Probably not, but hey, I can hope. See ya, I guess. Oh gosh, why am I still recording?